Hey guys, here we are at the final exam. So this is just a copy of the test, and we're going to go through every question that you're going to see on your review assignment and on the test. Starting with question 1. So the figure below, so think back to the very beginning of the year, we started in geometry. So that is why the first bit of the test is in geometry. The figure below is translated right 2 units and then rotated 180 degrees clockwise. So I want to know where R is going to end up when I've done these transformations. So if I'm going to go right 2 units, that's 1, 2. That's where R would be after the translation. And then if I'm going to rotate 180 degrees clockwise, first of all, 180 degrees clockwise or counterclockwise are the same thing. And my rule when I rotate 180 degrees is I switch the sign on both the X and the Y. So that's the, mathy rule. Obviously, maybe we could just picture it. If you just look at it, maybe you'd be able to see how far it would end up if it went 180 degrees. But regardless, my mathy rule is I switch the signs on both of them. So if my point is currently at -6, -5, and I switch the signs on both, then R, after a rotation of 180, would end up at 6, 5, positive. And so that would be my answer. +6, +5. Figure G is the result of a transformation on figure F. So figure F is where we're starting, figure G is where we're ending. Which transformation would accomplish this? Without even looking at my options immediately, I notice they do kind of look like mirrors of each other. Okay, this angle and this angle are the same. These are right on top of each other. If I folded these pictures on top of each other over the x-axis, they would land perfectly on each other. So that would be my option that I would pick without even looking at the other ones. So reflection over the x-axis. Figure TUV is the result of a transformation on QRS. So this one is my start. This is my finish. And I noticed that, well, first of all, they don't look like they've been flipped over or anything. And it hasn't just been shifted. Like, it's not like the same triangle is just somewhere else. It has definitely been spun. So, rotation, and it's spun 2 quadrants. 1 quadrant, 2 quadrants. So I'm thinking 180 degrees. Okay, that's unit 1. Unit 2 was all about the distance formula. I'm not asking you to do anything crazy with the distance formula besides doing it. So, here we go. This is your distance formula. The trickiest part of this was plugging it in and remembering everything, making sure you got everything. So, my x value is in one bubble. Remember, x value is always the first number in the point. So 7 minus 1 squared plus 5 minus -2 squared. So that would be 6 squared plus 7 squared. Oh my heck, guys. I'm doing it all by hand. You do not have to do it all by hand. Once you do this part, you can plug it in your calculator. I just don't have a calculator on me right now. So square root of 85. Okay, triple check me. Okay, and that's all you got from unit 2. Unit 3, we have several more because it was a much bigger unit. We covered a bunch of different stuff. First thing we covered was they're called literal equations. not linear, literal. Okay, it means there's a lot more letters than normal, but you solve it the exact same way. This is when we focused on inverse operations. If I am trying to solve the equation for t, then I have to think about what's happening to t. And it looks like it's being multiplied by r because they're right next to each other. That's multiplication. So if I want to undo multiplication, I would divide r, and whatever I do to one side of the equal sign, I do to the other. And then 2 r's cancel out. T all by itself, that was the point. Solving for t means to get it by itself, equals n divided by r. And that's my answer. Right? We can't assume that, n divided by r is going to be, 5. We don't have any numbers, so the answer is not going to be a number. It's just solved for t, and that's it. Okay. Solving an equation with variables on both sides. So I'm going to take my x terms, I'm going to put them together over on the left side. And I'm going to take my constant terms and put them over on the right side. And then we're going to simplify. Goes away. Negative 15. Divide by 3 on both sides. X equals negative 5. Okay, now doing an equation, but with context. Santiago buys cheese and apples at the store. He pays a total of $26.40. So I know that that's my total. He pays a total of $6.78 for cheese. And then he buys 3 bags of apples that each cost the same amount. So there's my word each. That's going to tell me that's the rate. I just paid that much for cheese. End of story. Like, it's not like per block of cheese. They told me that this was the total for cheese. So that's it. Plus 3 bags that each cost the same amount. So my goal is to find how much each bag of apples ended up costing at the end. So I'm going to subtract to both sides. And then I gotta do some math here. Holy crap, lots of borrowing. And then I'm gonna divide by 3. And then I get 6.54 equals x. So each bag of apples costs $6.54. That's pretty steep for a bag of apples, if you ask me, but maybe we're shopping somewhere fancy. Okay, another word problem, slightly different. Let's look at it. At the beginning, Luis planted a small sunflower in his backyard. When it was first planted, the sunflower was 20 inches tall. First planted tells me that's my start. The sunflower then began to grow. So growing means plus to me because it's going to get bigger, the sunflower will, at a rate of 2.5 inches per week. How tall will the sunflower be after 2 weeks? How tall will the sunflower be after W weeks? So that's my expression that represents this scenario. But I want to find specifically when it's been 2 weeks. So that is going to be 25. It'll be 25 inches tall after 2 weeks. Okay. Question 9. What is the slope of the line that passes through these points? Write your answer in simplest form. So, slope formula. Y values on top. My y values are the second numbers. So negative 9 minus 3 over negative 10 minus negative 13. Simplify that. negative 12 over 3, which would be negative 4. Write the equation of the line in fully simplified slope-intercept form. Ooh, hard to see, but I see these little dots. So that's telling me my slope. Okay, slope-intercept form, that's what they asked for, yeah, is y equals mx plus b. So my b value, my y-intercept is negative 2, plus my slope is going down 2 over 1 every time. Down 2 over 1, so negative 2 or negative 2 over 1 if you want to write it that way. These are both acceptable. Negative 2 over 1x or just negative 2x. Okay, same thing but in the reverse. Graph the line from the equation. So my slope is negative 1/5, but my starting place is positive 2. And I'm going to go down 1 over 5. And I went a little bit above and beyond, but that would be it. So the whole time I'm going down 1 over 5, down 1 over 5. Question 12, same vibe, but now we have a simpler looking line. When there's no slope involved like this, then that means that we either have a vertical or a horizontal line. When it's y equals, that means it only hits the y-axis. To possibly do that, we have to have a horizontal line. So I want my line to hit the y-axis at positive 2. Okay, now I want to use standard form, and I want to graph the line. So there's, honestly, at the end of the day, there's 2 ways to do this. We could solve for y, put it in slope-intercept form, and then do this question exactly how we did question 11. Or we can use the cover-up method, which is pretty simple but always hard to remember. So cover-up method, negative 3 times x equals 24. So negative 3 times negative 8 would be x equals 24. Then I'd cover up the other one. 3 times positive 8 is 24. Okay, that's one way to do it. The other way would be to solve for y. And I would get 8 minus 1x equals y. Okay, either way, y is positive 8, x is negative 8. Notice, excuse me, yeah. Oh, that should be plus 1. Okay. I have a positive 1 slope if my intercepts are negative 8 and positive 8 there. So cover-up method or solve for y. You do not have to do both. I just wanted to show both. Okay. Word problem, kind of. Anthony signed up for a streaming music service. There's a fixed cost for monthly membership. That's like you have an Amazon subscription that comes in, it's 20 bucks a month. Okay. And then you have to have a cost per song that you download. His total cost per month is given by this equation. X represents the number of songs he's downloaded, and C represents the total cost. What would the number 1.5 represent in this equation? 1.5 is the slope. Slope is rise over run. It is a rate of change. This is where the word change becomes important. So how much the streaming service charges per downloaded song. I see the word per. That makes me think that it's going to be this one. Rise over run. So my Y value in this case, quote unquote Y value, was the total cost over how many songs you downloaded. So how much you charged per download. That sounds right to me. For 100 songs, there's no 100 in here, so that doesn't make sense. The total cost per month, assuming one song is downloaded. I appreciate the word assuming, but that's a red flag for me. We don't assume. And then the cost to use service for 1 month if 0 songs are downloaded. That would be the y-intercept, right? When x equals 0, that's the y-intercept. That's not what we were asked for. We were asked for the slope. So it's A. Question 15. Put the following equation of a line into slope-intercept form. So what I did really quickly over here, like that's the whole point of this question in its entirety. Solve for y. So I get rid of the x term. When I say get rid of, I mean move it to the other side. Rewrite it. Divide by -2 on both sides. Y equals, okay, simplify separately. 2 negatives make a positive every time. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. Question 16. Now we have a system of equations. We've got 2 equations going on, and we're going to graph them all and state what the solution is. The solution to a system is where they cross. So we need to find where they cross. I'm going to start with my y-intercept here, put a dot on 5, and then my slope is 1/2, up 1 over 1. I'm doing this on like a paper version of the test, so I'm going to do it all the way from one end of the graph to the other. Whoop. Okay, one more time. My starting point for this one is -1, and my slope is -1, so looks like I'm going to end up crossing right here. Eyeball it. There we go. Okay, my solution is x value first, -4, +3. Determine if the following system has no solutions, infinite solutions, or exactly 1. So let's talk about the mathy way to do this first, and then I'll kind of show you how I can immediately tell. The mathy way is you need to make either these two or these two, not both at the same time, although that happens and that's cool. They need to be the same number, but with different signs. So I'm looking at my x terms and I'm like, I can turn -1 into a -2 by multiplying, or excuse me, I can turn the -1 into a +2 by timesing by -2. So I'm going to take the whole first equation and multiply it by -2. So then I get +2x plus, excuse me, -8y equals 8. I get -2x plus 8y equals -8. And then step 2 of the mathy way is I'm going to add the 2 equations together. And what happens in this case is I get everything to cancel out. And when I get 0 equals 0, that is infinite. If I had gotten 0 to equal 5, or if I had gotten 7 to equal 5, or if I had gotten -1,000 to equal 7, if I had gotten something that doesn't make sense, that would be 0 solutions. And if I had gotten x equals 3, or I had gotten y equals 1,000, or had the letter had stayed. Not everything had crossed out. If the letter had stayed, that would be one solution. And the one solution would be 3. So if everything cancels out, it's infinite. If I get this false statement, it's 0. And if I get x equals something or y equals something, if the letter stays, then it's one solution. I had gotten everything to cancel out, so this was infinite. I could tell immediately because I can see that these fit, right? If I times this by 2, I would get the same thing. If I times this by 2, I would get 8. And if I times this by 2, I would have gotten -8. I would have gotten the same line, letter for letter, number for number, all the way across. If I have the same line twice, then they cross an infinite amount of times. And that is why we say they have infinite solutions, because they cross that many times. So that's how I could tell that they were going to be infinite from the get-go. I could see that they fit together. Switching over to inequalities. The only thing different about inequalities and equal signs is if you are dividing or multiplying by a negative, you flip the sign. Doesn't look like we're going to do that this time. So it's good to just make note of it, just in case it happens to you on your test. We solve like normal, right? That's a -3. I'm going to move it over to the other side by adding 3. And I would get -35. Drop my sign down. That's a less than or equal to 5x. Divide by 5 on both sides. That is a +5. I will not be flipping my sign, but I will get a -7. So x is less than or equal to -7. Less than or equal to means closed circle. Open circle means just less than or just greater than. If I have x is less than or equal to -7, I'm going to come over here, and I want everything less. So less is left. -8 is a number less than -7. -10 and -12 are also less than -7, so that is the way to go. Question 19. Inequalities, but in a word problem. Shipping container will be used to transport several 100-kilogram crates across the country by rail. So that's my rate. The greatest weight that can be loaded into the container is 25,500. So that's the highest I can go. That's my max. I can't go higher. So that's my total. That tells me that's my total. Other shipments weighing 5,400 have already been loaded into the container. This is the greatest weight I could go, which means this has to be lower or equal. So less than or equal. Right, and solve an inequality. So from here, we're going to subtract on both sides. Looks like 20,100 divide by 100. Cool trick, just FYI, is you can just cross out all the zeros and you get x equals, not equals, x is less than or equal to 201. That means 201 more crates can go onto this ship, but no more than that. All right, we're at the end of part 1. Solve the following system of inequalities graphically. Okay, this is where you're going to do the same thing we did before as far as solving a system, but when we're doing inequalities, it's dotted line, solid line, shade above, shade below. Okay, so I'm going to graph my line. I know I'm doing it on paper, so I'm doing it on paper. You guys won't be doing this on paper. As a dotted line, because there's no line under the symbol. and that shade above. There we go. And then I'm going to switch colors now because that might be helpful. And then we're going to start at 5, and my slope is -1/2. Also dotted line. I'll add a few more dots just for good measure. And that's a shade below because it's less than. Less than is lower. Hopefully that sounds right. And if it doesn't, I'm sorry. Get used to it. Less is lower. Last thing I need to do is pick a point in my solution region. So that looks really gross because I overshaded. But -7, +6. Oh, I didn't even mean to do that, but that's awesome. That is a point in my solution region. Okay. You're going to be taking the test over 2 days, so I split it up into 2 different test looking things. So here we are back at question 1, but this is part 2 of the final exam. And we just finished unit 7 stuff, so here we are at unit 8, we're at functions. So given h of x equals that, find h of -2. That means everywhere that there was an x, I'm going to put a -2. So -4, -2, -4. Plug it out my calculator. And I get 4. Right? That's +8 minus 4 equals, yeah. Okay. Do it again, but I put a quadratic function on there. Quadratic means there's a little squared. Everywhere that there is an x, I'm going to put a 10. Note, if this was a -10, the negative would have gone inside the parentheses. But because the negative is outside here, it stays outside. The only thing that should be inside your parentheses is a 10. And when I plug that into my calculator, looks like I get -83. Check me. Okay. Everywhere there's an x, put a 10. Put whatever number you have. Okay, now we gotta tell some things about functions. We're not just evaluating them. We're not just saying I can plug something in for it. I've got to say details about it. For example, domain and range. Range is y, domain is x. Okay, we learned 2 different ways to write these. We learned the inequality way, and we learned the interval notation way. Inequalities is the less thans and greater thans. Interval is the hard brackets and soft brackets. Okay, I'll show you both. Range is y values. So that is where's my graph, lowest to highest. So I see -9 to +1. And because they are on a solid line, they are both hard brackets. I'm doing range, so that is y. So I'm going to say -9 is less than or equal to y, less than or equal to 1. They're always less than symbols. Okay, so that's that's the easy, quick trick if you're going to do inequality notation. And those are your 2 ways to write it. Note, you have an open circle, but because it is not your lowest point, it is an endpoint, which is cool, but because it's not your lowest point, you don't care. When you're doing range, you only care about the lowest and the highest, which are both on your solid line. Okay, a couple other things about the graph. Positive, negative, increasing, decreasing. In this case, we care about from point A to point B. So I don't know if you noticed that, but as I squiggled up. So that to me means increasing. Increasing means it's going up. Decreasing means it's going down, like from C to D. Now positive and negative means positive is above the x-axis and negative is below. So A to B is right there, close to the x-axis, but it is above. So we're going to say positive and increasing for this one. Now we're being asked about decreasing. Everywhere that it's decreasing, that means everywhere that my pen is going down as I squiggle. So this is going up, so absolutely not. Going down, and then I'm going back up again. And I've just got to say that. Okay, so this is where we bring in our soft brackets and hard brackets again. Tricky thing. We only care about x values, remember? So even though this arrow is going up, it is going to the left, and that makes it negative infinity. So I would say negative infinity all the way to negative 5. Or, that's the or symbol. Again, it's at 2, but that's not the x value. X value here is 0 to positive 5. And that's how I would say where it's decreasing on this graph. I could also put it in inequality notation, and I would say everything less than negative 5 or 0, no line, to 5. One or the other. You do not have to do both, but I wanted to show you both. Okay, that is Unit 8 for your final exam. Unit 9 is the rest. Which contexts below represent exponential decline or decay? So not only do we need exponential, that means it's multiplying, as opposed to linear, which is when you're adding. We are looking for something that's getting smaller. So, spoiler alert, it's going to be that one, but let's start from the bottom up and figure out why. Percent means it's multiplying. That's a giveaway that it's exponential. However, the word appreciates means it's going up. Okay, when you have a fancy coin collection, or you have an action figure, or you have a house, they gain value, and that is used by the word appreciates. Money invested in a savings account grows at 3.2%, so that tells me that's exponential as well, but that is a growth, not a decay. Snow was melting at a rate of 2.5 inches per hour. That's subtracting. You are subtracting 2.5 inches per hour. So that's not exponential. However, that is a decay. You're losing snow. So A, the amount of a certain medication in a person's bloodstream decreases by 1/3 every hour. So that is what we call a factor or a ratio. So I know that that's exponential and it's decreasing 1/3 every hour. So it's a decay as well. So that is my answer. Speaking of exponential and linear, linear is usually given by our lovely y equals mx plus b, but exponential looks like this, where a is the starting value and b is the growth rate, aka your like exponential slope. So a radioactive compound with mass 380 grams, so that's my starting, so they're all 380, decays at a rate of 21% per hour. Which equation represents how many grams after 8 hours? So first things first, I don't see a little 8 on this one, so immediately gone. We are decaying, so I know it's going to be 1 minus 21%. This would be 1 plus 21%, so that's out. There is no 1 plus or 1 minus on this one, so it's not that one. If I did the math and I said 1 minus 0.21 or 1 minus 21%, I would absolutely get 0.79. So that is my answer. Because it has the correct start, it has the correct 1 minus the 21%, and it's got to the 8th power. Okay, now we're doing the same thing, but you got to plug it in your calculator at the end. So a town has a population of 5,000. It's growing at a rate of 4.5%. So I can say 1 plus 4.5%. What is the population after 12 years? To the nearest whole number. We're talking about people. You're not going to have like 0.5 of a person. So we're going to round to the whole number. 4.5% as a decimal is 0.045. I would get 8,479.4 blah, 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 blah. That 4 would round my buddy. Well, it wouldn't round. It would stay 9. So that would be my final answer. Same thing. A new car is purchased for $20,600. The value of the car depreciates, so that's 1 minus 8.5%. What is it after 12 years? So gotta make sure it's a little 12, or else I'm gonna get weird numbers. My car's value after 12 years, geez, that's pretty high still. 7094.47. I would round to the nearest cent, so it's actually 476. I'd round, or I'd look at my buddy here, and my 7 would become an 8. So 7,094.48. All right, sequences. Arithmetic sequence is D n minus 1 plus A1. DNA. D stands for difference. How much is my pattern changing every time? Looks like I'm adding 3. So positive 3. I'm finding the 86th term. And the first term is 18. I'm going to plug that in my calculator. And I get 273. Okay, same vibe, but now the geometric sequence. Geometric sequence means it's multiplying or dividing. My formula for that is this one. So you've got like the same type of things going on, but instead of a difference, now you have a ratio. Ratio is what you're multiplying by, difference is what you're adding by. So first term is 10. My ratio, it looks like I am timesing by 4 each time. And I'm looking for the 14th term. So big number, but that's okay. And oh my heck, it's like the 3rd time this video 6 7's popped up. Huge number. That's all right. There we go. All right, home stretch. Box and whisker plot below represents some data set. Cool. What percentage of the data are greater than or equal to 65? It's like 65's right there. Okay, we know that in a box plot, every piece of the box plot is 25%. So if I'm looking for everything bigger than this line, that's one piece. That is 1/25%. In a box and whisker plot, there's your minimum, your quartile 1, your median, quartile 2, your maximum. So if I want to find the maximum, it looks like it's directly on 75. Cool. Two-way tables. Okay. 14 women shop online. 49 women were surveyed in total. 60 total people said they shopped at a grocery store. 90 people were surveyed overall. From there, I can figure out the rest. So, okay. Adding and subtracting your way, figuring out the rest of the table. In this survey, how many men were surveyed? Well, I'm going to look at my men, and there were 46. What percent of people preferred reading electronic books? Electronic books, that was 69 people out of 131. If I want the percent, that is part over your total. So 69 people out of 131 total is 0.526717. Holy freak, guys. Okay. Round to the nearest 1/10%. So if I'm going to convert this to a percent, that's 52.6717%. And I would round my 6 up to a 7. Okay, this is a much bigger two-way table. Let's zoom out a bit. What percent of people between the ages of 21 and 34? Okay, so I am just looking at this group right here. Prefer basketball. So 10 out of 39. Round to the nearest 1/10%. That would be 25.6%. Scatter plots. Graph your scatter plot. X value is 3, Y value is 4. Where they intersect, put a dot. And just keep doing that. 2, 1, 9, 6, 2, 5, 2. All right, if I had to say what the association or what the correlation is, I would say that's positive. My dots kind of look like they're going up because as we go this way on the x-axis, my dots go up, they increase. Don't have to plot them this time. There's definitely a pattern here, right? I've definitely got a pattern, but it is not a linear one. Shows, I'm sure it says something prettier than this, but non-linear, because the values of y generally follow a non-linear pattern. Describe the association. They look like they're kind of going up. So positive linear. Because the y values generally increase. Okay. Please don't think you have to watch that whole video. Please just watch what you need. That's your final exam. Please go through the review. Please ask for help if you need it pre the test, because I cannot help you during the test. You guys have a good day. Thank you for all your hard work.